Hello. In this video, I will explain how you can use autoethnography to analyze your personal experience of playing tabletop games. I recommend Paul Booth's chapter on his experience with the board game Gloomhaven in the book Board Games as Media for further reading. Gloomhaven is a very deep board game that involves role-playing elements, combat, and exploration. But you can just as readily do an autoethnographic study of chess or a game of cards. The key thing to remember is that the auto means the self, and ethnography means writing about culture. So when you are using this approach to explore the experience of a board game, you are writing about your cultural experience of that game, not just the game and not just the self. When writing about your culture, you are expected to be critical, which is not an easy task. Writing critically about your culture requires that you take stock of who you are, where you are, and how your family, education, friends, identity, nationality, regionality, and so on all contribute to the assemblage that is you. It is important because your cultural background contributes to how you engage in a game experience and how you make sense of it. Remember, being critical does not mean being negative. It means drawing attention to the values, beliefs, assumptions, and expectations that you bring to a game experience and the shaping of the meaning that you take from the experience. The first step of any autoethnography is collecting data. We get good at collecting data by systematizing the process. You might play a game 3 times or 30, but each time you collect information and materials about your experience. This does not have to take long, but you need to be organized. You can collect data in several ways. You can take notes and photos. You can use video to record your game experience. After a game, you can sit and, for say 5 minutes, record an audio log reflecting on your time with the game. Collect a range of information with your data. Make observations and note key details. Record information that might actually appear obvious because that will help you reveal assumptions about the experience. Do not discount emotions. What made you feel good or made you feel bored or frustrated? What was your experience of trying to learn the rules? Try to think about your expectations about going into the experience and how those shaped your time with the game. You can take photos of the game and add them to a document with a few key annotations about what is happening in each image. Once you have a good range of observations, you can start to narrow down your key data points. These are what we call epiphanies. They are the topmost remembered moments that stand out to you in the data that are central or important to communicating what is relevant about your experience to others. The purpose of autoethnography is to take these key moments and begin to analyze them, which means to make sense of them, and then communicate what it means for you to be playing this game and having this experience in this particular time and space. Autoethnography emphasizes personal experience, including bias, and considers how your emotions and your cultural background shapes the experience and the analysis. It is this subjective discourse, which means you cannot extrapolate and generalize your experience to others. You are providing a description that includes your broader cultural experience in order to analyze the details and connect them to larger meanings about that experience. Which brings us on to the next step, analyzing and drawing on further sources. Once you have, say, your top 3 epiphanies, you can begin your analysis in earnest. Here is where you draw on further research to help unpack your emotions and reactions. This is where Paul Booth's chapter is particularly useful. In his account, Booth provides details about his experience with 2 Gloomhaven characters he chose to play, in which he then discusses the tropes of race in fantasy games and the fantasy genre in general. He says, I was immediately attracted to 2 races, the Tinkerers, possibly because I identified with their puzzle-solving intelligence attributes, and the Savers, possibly because of the control over the elements that they have is just mystical enough to be interesting, but not as fantastical as pure magical control. This analysis then turns to a critical discussion of race in fantasy tropes, particularly the work of other scholars writing about J.R.R. Tolkien's use of race as the determining factor of personal characteristics in The Lord of the Rings. For example, orcs are referred to by Tolkien as having slanted eyes and swarthy complexion, and are the primary evil race in that fictional setting. Any race as being fundamentally evil is, as Booth describes it, inherently problematic as it equates biological attributes with cultural qualities. Here, Booth is moving from the individual experience to the broader critical cultural discussion. Autoethnography is also a chance to learn about the self, and he also writes, "I felt like my characters were an extension of myself in this game world, and in playing them, in a way, Gloomhaven was also playing me." This brings us to the final step, which is communicating your findings and sharing your results with others. By interrogating your cultural and personal expectations, desires, and actions, you can find unique revelations that make your analysis of the text's experience different to anyone else's, which makes autoethnography particularly interesting as a way to create media content. Remember, you cannot make broader claims about your experience for others, but you can use your personal experience to help reveal interesting things about the game, about yourself, and about the broader culture that you are part of. Thanks for playing, and remember to play more games.